Welcome to Jargon, a podcast bringing clarity to commonly misunderstood business concepts. We're debunking and simplifying the buzzwords and ideas plaguing today's business world and offering a fresh perspective on these topics. Good afternoon. This is Peter Purcell.
And Bill Imany.
We're here for another podcast. First one in about 2.5 months, primarily because we have just remodeled our offices.
And we didn't have any good ideas to talk about.
Yeah, actually, that's probably the bigger reason.
But we do have something interesting to talk about today.
Is it about stocks, Bill?
No, it's actually about the conundrum many companies get into where, and we see this a lot of times when we're talking to prospects and companies out there that are looking for help. What we find is this conundrum of where they're spending a lot of effort trying to improve their procure to pay process while their order to cash or contract to cash or bid to bill, whatever you want to call it, the customer facing processes are a dumpster fire, for lack of a better word.
Right. And I think what we see, Bill, when you take a look at procure to pay, it seems to be easier. It feels easier because it's internal. And when you are pushing back, you're not pushing back to customers, you're pushing back to suppliers.
Yeah, so many times we have prospects come to us and say, we want to put in OCR, optical character recognition, AI to help with our AP process to pay our bills faster or more efficient. And you start talking about their problems and issues, and the issues are on the other side of the table. But before we dive into the other side of the table, the customer-facing side, where there's really opportunities to use the right technologies and processes, why are companies so focused on procure to pay and not really looking at where the real problems are?
Right. Well, and the interesting thing is, before the folks out there or the two people that are listening go, hey, wait a minute, procure to pay is important because I need, everything from raw materials to consumables to support my customers.
And consulting services.
And consulting services, really important things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about the process of once items arrive, what happens in procure to pay around invoicing and that area.
Yeah. So one example is a company will say, we process all these invoices and we want to automate it and we want to put in optical character recognition where when I get the invoice in, it automatically combined with AI knows what fields it needs to go to and recognize and stick into my ERP system automatically. However,
that's a whole mouthful, but the truth of the matter is I would advise caution based on our experience, a lot of experience. Invoices need to be in a very consistent format for that kind of thing to work. And by the time that you do go and make corrections, because most invoices will require manual intervention, even after an OCR read or even an AI-empowered OCR read, you might as well have just done it manually.
Yeah, and now the best example is, let's say you have 1,000 invoices a month you're getting, and they're all in the same format. Some big, supplier that's providing, whatever it is that you're buying thousands of, and you get these invoices and you don't have to key them in. What we tell people, the easier answer to that is
EDI.
Yeah.
Eddie. Use Eddie.
Yeah.
Eddie.
But, that electronic data interchange has been around forever. But there's even a simpler answer. Ask your supplier to send you a spreadsheet or a CSV file of all the invoices, and then you can load that into your ERP system and skip the entire step of getting a document.
Right. And even though it does cost a little bit of money, if there is a ton of suppliers out there, just get something like Open Invoice, right? So the suppliers input their own invoice. And then accuracy really kind of falls on their shoulders, and all that manual intervention falls on their shoulders.
Correct.
But then, Bill, if I make procure to pay more efficient, and I'm not talking about supply chain optimization here, right, which is what I was alluding to in the beginning. But if I make payment easier, why am I wanting to put money out faster? As a CFO, I wouldn't want my DPO to go down, would I?
Well, probably not, but I think it's more about the efficiency side. That's a good question, though, Peter. I want to bring more money in faster. But before we drop the subject of OCR, because I don't want to sound like I'm a Debbie Downer on OCR and AI.
Yeah, there's always a place.
There's a place. Like, for example, let's say you're building big components and you have specification documents that come in with pages and pages of engineering diagrams and whatnot. In a lot of cases, if it's a repeatable process, you can start bringing in that data using OCR and AI to recognize where does the serial number fall, where does a specific component fall, to populate your, I'll call it your product documentation and the parts and pieces that go into it, so you have a full you've taken unstructured data that are sitting in documents and put it in a structured format in your engineering system so that you can then trace back the serial numbers and parts and pieces that go into the systems that you manufacture, as an example.
Yeah, and that's a great use, right? And probably a lot more useful than just for standalone.
For invoices, I've seen too many times where companies, they were sold a bill of goods for OCR and really they weren't able to really do anything and they ended up throwing up their hands. Or maybe they were just able to get customer vendor header information, but they couldn't get the pieces and parts and the details beneath it. So all it really did was help them route things from a customer header perspective, but not much more. So right. I'm sorry, vendor supplier header perspective. But we see too many people focusing on that. So you ask them, why don't you go address the big issue over on the other side of the house with getting your invoices out, getting paid?
Oh, no, we can't do that, Bill. Our starting just in the field, asking our crew chiefs to be more accurate on their field tickets and, their work tickets. They'll leave us. They'll go work for somebody else. And then, I can't push back on my supplier. My customer. My customer will be pissed and they'll go somewhere else. And then lastly, the technology. I can't. I know. I ate something bad. I know, because I ate something bad for lunch.
Yeah, well, I can't help you with that, but what I can say to you is think about the customer engagement process. When was the last time you sat down with a customer and maybe even just had an intelligent conversation about how to make things more efficient?
Right. And by the way, that's the partnership component. Even if you're providing commodity services, the way you differentiate yourself may not just be in lower pricing. If you could engage your customer and be more of a partner, that works out pretty well. And by the way, in a partnership, there's give and take on both sides. And this is where you can start having a little bit of a discussion about, hey, customer, to be more efficient for me and for me to be able to get you the information you need, let's talk a little bit about some give and take, because you're going to be talking to their supply chain guys, right, typically. But let's talk a little bit about what I can send you, how fast I can get it to you, and if I standardize it across the country, wouldn't that make it easier for you?
Right, and really understand what when they say I want an invoice in a specific format, do they mean how it's laid out, or do they just want the information that's on there? And so many times someone will say, well, what do you want your invoice format to be? And they'll send you another supplier's invoice format. So then they spend all this time trying to replicate the format, like how many inches down does the invoice number sit and where does and then the line item details. Really ask them, what is it you need to see? And then, by the way, does it need to be on the invoice or can it be on backup that I provide to you? Maybe it's field tickets that I stick on the back of a very standard, simple invoice. So have those discussions on what does the customer really need to see. And honestly, if you think about this. Think about the last time you bought something and I'll say supplier or service provider asked some really good questions and wanted to talk to you about keeping things simple and efficient. Customers appreciate that.
Absolutely, because just to beat a dead horse, when you start talking about layout of invoice, 9 times out of 10, it's the specific information they need, not necessarily the template, right? Because they're going to need help. They typically, if you look in oilfield services and you have a large E&P company as a customer, they have an AFE process. And part of that AFE process, they need their project number, they need their PO number. They may need information broken out by here's labor, here's consumables, right?
They might have a schedule of values or a BOQ that they use that they have to input in their own internal systems to be able to track the components of their systems and I'll call it infrastructure that they have.
So if you already have a standard invoice that has that information, typically that's good enough.
And maybe you don't, and maybe you need to provide that backup. But part of it is understanding, are there certain schedules of values that a customer wants to see, mapping those to yours so that it's clear, so that when you are putting in that information in your systems, you have a way to map it to it and understand it. Also, make sure that you're communicating with them and providing that information in the right format and not providing too much but not enough, but enough to get the invoice paid.
Exactly. And this conversation, just as Bill and I'm having this conversation across the table, which we are sitting across the table from each other, you can have that, or salespeople can have that conversation with supply chain people from your customers. And we would also suggest that it's not just the salesperson getting involved, but get somebody from operations or somebody from engineering or finance or somebody else also engaged in this discussion. Because salespeople in general, they just want the sale and they want to make it easy. And honestly, this is an operational issue. So by having these discussions and having this initial kind of partnership building exercise is huge.
Well, what you're really talking about is getting operations involved in the sales process. And so when it starts turning, this deal is going to be real.
Finance.
Yeah, but finance should be too. But operations, the guys you're going to hand it over to are going to have to actually deliver to the customer, making sure that they agree and understand. But the other side of this coin too that makes it tough is getting the field basically getting the field to actually standardize and do things. Peter, comment a little bit about that, would you?
Well, yeah, obviously.
You've dealt with this a lot.
Look, bottom line, you're going to hear comments, or you may have heard comments before. If we try to make our field crews capture more information or capture information very accurately and the like, they'll probably leave and go work somewhere else, because if they don't have to have this discipline and they can make $1 an hour, they'll go somewhere else. We get that, okay? But the bottom line is you can do two things. One, first of all, you need to standardize all your work tickets. Bottom line, by line of business. Just bottom line, standardize your work tickets. Make them as checklisted as possible. And if you want to, start with the template in an Excel. Now, I know we're going to talk about technology here in a second, but if you do feel, or if a company feels that their crews are going to leave for $1 an hour, you know what? Pay them an extra $1 an hour. Maybe even pay them a little bit of a bonus based on accuracy of the information that they're capturing. Just a little bit. It pays you back in the long term, pay the company back in the long term.
Well, and these are your people who are out there in the field, the face of your company, doing high quality work. If you're going to put your business operations in their hands, there's no reason why you can't ask them to do a little bit more to put the right numbers in a spreadsheet and make sure it's right.
It needs to be part of the job.
Yeah.
It literally just needs to be part of the job.
But I think the challenges most companies have is when they let their employees kind of do whatever they want, but then they try to standardize it. That's where the tough part is, when you start pushing them to standardize. When we talk to field people, about half of them are perfectly happy to put that information in. It's the one or two squeaky wheel guys that go, we can't do it. Our people, whatever excuses, they don't know how to use a computer. Peter, for example, you like McDonald's, and you're in West Texas. You were telling me you were watching these guys looking at their iPhones. I thought they had flip phones.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So
they can use an iPhone. Why can't they use an app or a spreadsheet?
Right. So now we're going into the technology realm. A lot of companies will say, our crews can't use technology. Look, just walk into any McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Pizza Hut. That's really upscale in West Texas, and see how many people are doing the iPhone prayer. And I guarantee you it's probably going to be about 100%. So if they can do the iPhone prayer, they can fill out a simple field ticket.
Exactly. And if you tell them, hey, this is how you get paid,
exactly,
they kind of respond to that. And if you do it, you roll it out properly. Like you said, Peter, you start off with a standard, do it in Excel, get everybody comfortable with that, and say, okay, we're going to make it easier now. Let me ask you this. Why do people resist when they give a new technology? What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, sometimes new technology, it's different. People just don't like change. So that's the first thing. But second thing is too many clicks. You have to be careful.
Too complicated?
And it feels too complicated. And so what you have to realize, and we've written a whole article about this. Actually, we have 3 articles out there.
4 or 5 articles.
Well, on this particular topic about making technology user-friendly in the field, don't forget, they're wearing gloves, okay? I'm going to pause for a second. They're wearing gloves.
They should be anyway.
They should be. So if they're wearing gloves, what are you going to give them? You need to make sure that if you're giving them a tablet, that whatever they're touching and clicking is big enough to sense that they're still wearing gloves. And then if you have laptops, that's even better. But make sure they're in the trucks. Trucks are sitting there idling, air conditioning. They're happy. They're filling this stuff out. It gives them a chance to cool off.
Let's step back a little bit. Say maybe 10 years ago when you rolled out technology to the field, typically they would give you access to the Oracle or SAP screen, and they would tell the guy to look at it. And I'll tell you, I've seen some of them. I'm kind of like a dog watching TV looking at them, so I don't blame these guys for going, I've got 50 different things on the screen. I just need 2 or 3 things, and I need to put my hours and my materials,
my consumables, and what I did.
Yeah,
it's simple. What did I do? And here's my work ticket. And my field ticket matches my work ticket, and I click off everything. Oh, they asked me to do this. I just add it. And by the way, it's drop-down box, because you should have price list and fixed services.
They shouldn't be able to freeform anything.
They shouldn't be able to freeform anything, because if they're freeforming, they shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Just remember that.
But
if they're freeforming it, they shouldn't have done it.
But think about this. So when they have these complicated screens, they're not going to use it. But so what's neat about today is you got these low-code platforms that are out there that can sit on top of your ERP and integrate with it, that essentially provide that simple user interface. So think about when you order something from Amazon. Typically, if you know how to use an iPhone a little bit, you know which button to press to order it.
Oh, yeah. It's easy. I mean, unfortunately, it's almost too easy, because I keep the company stocked through Amazon, and it's just too easy to order that.
I know.
way.
We keep getting packages every day of stuff, and
it's like, what is it?
What are you ordering, Peter?
You keep sending it back. But anyway, just to backtrack a little bit, I mean, Bill's right, and I skipped over the point where back when we really did not have these low-code platforms, we didn't have tablets, and the power that we have in tablets and PCs and laptops essentially today is folks were given access to Tier 1 applications, and folks out there know how hard it is to learn a Tier 1 application. So going to these low-code platforms addresses the technology issue. Second thing that addresses the technology issue, frankly, is connectivity. I'd say up until about 5 or 6 years ago, anywhere in the country, if you got outside of a large town, you had connectivity issues. Now, that's pretty much gone away. You know, you see the little cell boosters in the back of pickup trucks, and you have Starlink now. You have just a variety of technologies. There's no reason why you should be disconnected in the field. So doing that on top of low code, technology should no longer be an issue.
I agree 100%, Peter. And I'll tell you, when we talk about low code platforms, essentially they're platforms where someone can go in without knowing Java or some high-end technology, then go in and build these simple user interface screens that map to your ERP system. So essentially, I have something that looks more like an Amazon, or looks more like a Yahoo or something like that interface, or an email interface of some sort. That's so much easier to navigate and look at.
Yeah, and it's so easy that Bill, who is not our technology transformation person, can actually describe it correctly. And I, as our technology transformation person, can't even describe it at all. That's humor. You guys can laugh at that. Ha.
All right.
So anyway, to recap. So if we were to start back at the beginning, here was the premise of what we wanted to talk about. Bottom line is, when companies go out and they want to improve back office processes, don't just go after the easy stuff. Procure to pay is pretty easy to fix, but just be cautious about using technology to do things like OCR, even infused with AI. There's still templates, and it's certainly not a panacea. But what we're suggesting is, if you had an equal amount of dollars, invest in fixing your order to cash process. That helps you with your DSO. That helps you
cash. It's cash, getting money in the door.
Getting cash in the door. And it's things like dealing with contract leakage on that side. It's dealing with making sure that you're charging the right amount, which of course is a form of contract leakage. Making sure that you're capturing all the right information, again, contract leakage, and making sure that your customers are happy. You can partner with them as part of the process, which strengthens your relationship and reduces their chances of going somewhere else.
And if you're thinking about using AI, think about how you can use AI to help audit, automate, and find contract discrepancies. You've got a whole database of contracts, scanning those contracts to see, am I complying up on the actual payment side and what I'm being billed, and using AI to help us sift through that data. Because typically, if you've got all these customer contracts, the data's there. You've got customer invoices, the data's there. Use that data and use AI to help look at that contract leakage as well.
Oh, yeah, big time. And there are some very, very large companies out there using AI for that very reason right now. And they're bolt-ons. If you want to know, we know of like 4 or 5 companies that will go and read your contract database and do that type of analysis for you.
Hey, and if you have more questions about what we're talking about here, feel free to email us at info@trinergy.com. And by the way, if you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, please go ahead and give us a nice 5-star rating, and post your comments too.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. All right.